The NFL offseason is now here for all 32 NFL teams, and the goal of every offseason is to do what the Kansas City Chiefs did on Sunday night, which is win a Super Bowl. Some teams are a lot closer to this goal than others, and a big part of winning a Super Bowl is acquiring more talent in March and April. The Philadelphia Eagles nearly won the Super Bowl, and acquiring A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans played a huge part in the success they had in 2022. However, A.J. Brown was not the only player that was traded last offseason that went on to help his new team in a big way. And there's going to be a lot of trades this offseason, and big trades at that. Star players will be moved just like last year, as Russell Wilson, Devontae Adams, and Tyreek Hill all found new homes. And that's what we're going to discuss in today's video, is 4 big players that could be traded this offseason. And there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And the first player we are going to discuss is Cardinals receiver DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre has been one of the best receivers in the NFL since he entered the league back in 2013. Unfortunately for DeAndre, both teams he's played for, in the Texans and Cardinals, have not had a lot of team success. And while the Texans weren't anywhere close to as bad as they are now, as they made 4 playoff appearances in DeAndre's 7 years with the franchise, they never made the AFC Championship game, and even when they made the playoffs, they weren't a serious threat, and very few people were picking them to make a deep postseason run. And since they jumped out to a 24-0 lead on the Chiefs in the divisional round of the playoffs during Kansas City's first Super Bowl run, it's been downhill for that franchise since. DeAndre was traded to the Cardinals in the 2020 offseason for a measly second-round pick, which was understandably laughed at the time because everyone thought Hopkins was worth so much more, and he was. But fast forward 3 years later, and when DeAndre has played for Arizona, he has been what they hoped for in a receiver. He had over 1,400 yards in 2020 and made an unreal game-winning catch over the Bills as time expired. Unfortunately, that was his peak during his time with Arizona, a game-winning Week 10 catch over the Bills. And not to take anything away from that play, because it was insane when it happened and everyone's jaw dropped, but the Cardinals made this trade to win a Super Bowl or to make a deep postseason run. They made this trade to help out their young quarterback in Kyler Murray, and to have 1 playoff appearance in 3 years in a game they were beat by 23 points is not how they envisioned the next 3 years when they made this trade. And Kyler tearing his ACL and expected to miss a lot of 2023 only puts the Cardinals in a worse situation because they're not going to do anything of note next year. They can't afford a Jimmy G or Derek Carr to play half the year with a not great roster, then expect Kyler Murray to come in and magically save the season. And having said this makes me think the Cardinals are better off trading DeAndre Hopkins, even if it's for a little bit of a discount, because they're not competing next year. Sure, they may win 4 or 5 games, but this roster is terrible. They have no quarterback, aside from Kyler Murray when he's playing, and J.J. Watt retired, and I know you may be thinking, okay, well, it's J.J. Watt, but J.J. had 12.5 sacks in 2022 and was the Cardinals' leading pass rusher. DeAndre has a cap hit of $30 million in 2023 and a cap hit of $26 million in 2024, but that's the price of a great receiver. And in 9 games in 2022, he had over 700 yards receiving, which for a 17-game season would have had him on pace for 121 receptions for over 1,300 yards and 6 touchdowns. DeAndre will be 31 years old at the start of the 2023 season, and if you're going to beat a team like the Chiefs, you have to be able to keep up. Patrick Mahomes is a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you may get lucky here or there and hold them to 20 points, but you cannot depend on that. So it makes a ton of sense for an AFC team to clear up space and trade for DeAndre Hopkins. It makes your quarterback happy, it makes your life easier on your offensive coordinator, and hell, if you win a lot of games, which is something DeAndre I'm sure would love, he might even finish his career there on a discount. 2023 is going to be a bad year for the Cardinals, and I think they would be wise to get as many picks for their future as they can. Next up is Cam Jordan of the Saints, and this is a situation similar to DeAndre Hopkins. Not quite the same, but similar in the fact of unloading a veteran contract to a team that thinks they will be competing for a Super Bowl in 2023. Aside from Will Anderson, it's going to be hard for any draft prospect to come in and contribute as a rookie what Cam would bring to a team for this year. Obviously, they would outplay Jordan in the long run, as he will be 34 years old in July, but Jordan quietly had a solid 2022 as he finished with 8.5 sacks and, believe it or not, made his 8th Pro Bowl. Cam has been so productive for so long, it gets lost sometimes how good of a player he really is. He has over 115 career sacks and will be a Hall of Famer. But I would be surprised if Cam wants to finish his career in New Orleans on a team that will more than likely not make the playoffs and a team that will more than likely have anywhere from 5 to 8 wins in 2023. Even in the best case scenario, if this team signs Derek Carr, sure, Derek can lead them to an NFC South title, as the South is not a good division at the moment, especially after Tom Brady retired. But are they going to go into San Francisco or Philly and beat either one of those teams? To me, the answer is a resounding no, and not only does this decision to trade Cam Jordan make sense for him, it makes sense for the Saints too. It's always hard getting rid of veterans and players who have meant so much to the team for so long, but Cam has a cap hit of $25.6 million in 2023 and a dead cap hit of $23 million, meaning if the Saints flat out released him, technically they would save $2 million, but they would be spending $23 million to do so. So it makes a lot more sense for them to trade Cam, and for a team to take Cam's contract, which to be clear is a lot easier said than done. Like we mentioned with DeAndre Hopkins, in order to win a Super Bowl, you have to be strong in the trenches. There's a reason teams with good offensive lines win Super Bowls a lot more often than teams with bad offensive lines do, and it's because games are won and lost in the trenches. Sure, Cam may not be the 15.5 sack player he was in 2019, but he can be an 8 to 10 sack guy in the right place. Teams will get creative in order to move money around, and the Saints especially will, as they are always pressed against the cap. But Cam ring chasing and going to a contender for him at least would be desired to end his career. Jordan would be traded for a later round pick because of the contract, and for the Saints, because of the cap situation, would almost have to take the offer. So Cam Jordan going to a contender benefits him and the Saints too. I will quickly discuss a player whose name has been mentioned because of him wanting a contract extension, and it's T. Higgins. T is entering the final year of his rookie deal, and it makes zero sense for the Bengals to trade him. Sure, T can be upset about not being paid good relative to his production, but that's every great player on their rookie contract. The Bengals have zero incentive to trade him, especially for as good as he is. And if they traded him, all they would be doing would be trying to draft a player to become as good as T. Higgins. I know there's a lot of rumors around this, but T will not be traded this offseason when he has another full year on his rookie deal. Next up may be a surprising one, but what I want remembered is the title of this video is 4 NFL players that could be traded this offseason, and it's Bucs receiver Mike Evans. Mike was drafted in the first round back in 2014 and has had 1,000 yards in every season of his career. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a very interesting situation as a franchise, and this could merit an entire video by itself, so don't be surprised if this is a video in the near future, but they have a decision to make, and that's whether to go all in or to blow it up and rebuild, which is a very tough decision because they won a Super Bowl a few years ago. They won with a lot of this core group of guys, with Mike Evans, Devin White, Levante David, Chris Godwin, Antoine Winfield, and everyone else. But do they try and run it back, or do they make the tough decision and get rid of not only Mike Evans, but presumably Levante David amongst others too? And as we mentioned, Mike was drafted back in 2014, so I know you may be thinking, well, how old is this guy? And basically have a thought of, could we finesse him from the Bucs for cheap? but Mike is only 29 years old. Granted, he will be 30 by the start of next season, but one place I think could be an interesting trade location for Evans is the Chicago Bears. They have an enormous amount of money, and granted, this idea is a little bit of pie in the sky, but follow me on the thought process here. Chicago trades back to pick 4 with Indy and capitalizes on at least one more first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a second-round pick next year. They could then trade one of those picks or a combination of picks for Evans and give Justin Fields a legit number 1 option. And a lot of Evans' early years are kind of masked in terms of how productive he was because of how bad those Bucs teams were, but he quietly has 81 career touchdowns and will more than likely get to 100 touchdowns in the next 2 years. This makes perfect sense for a team like the Bears, who are doing everything they can to build around Justin Fields while he is still on the rookie contract. The Bears are not the only team that could trade for Evans, to be clear, but they do make a lot of sense. Mike could realistically do the anti-Tom Brady route and be traded to the Patriots. They have a lot of cap space and can create more through a combination of restructures and releases, and would be extremely beneficial for the Pats. They too have a quarterback from the 2021 draft class in Mac Jones, and trading Mike Evans, while it would be a very tough decision, makes a lot of sense for Tampa in how they approach the next few years. From Tampa to the frozen tundra, we go to discuss Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers' name has been involved in a lot of trade discussions over the past few years, and as cliche as this sounds, it makes a lot more sense than it ever has. And there are several destinations that make sense for the 4-time league MVP. We just discussed Mike Evans being a trade candidate, but what was mentioned within the Evans segment was the possibility of the Bucs going all in. This would obviously require a lot of maneuvering around the cap, and it would potentially put them in a situation like the Saints are in now for 2024, but there is a chance they go all in to acquire Aaron Rodgers, albeit a small chance, but there is a chance nonetheless. It would make a lot of sense for Aaron, as he would get to finish his career throwing to both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and I do think the Bucs would win the division in 2023 with a healthy Rodgers. He might face the dreaded San Francisco 49ers in the postseason, but in order for Aaron to get a second ring, you have to beat the best at some point in time. Another possibility is Las Vegas, and this makes a lot of sense for the Raiders, as they would be pairing Rodgers with his former teammate Davante Adams. I honestly don't think Rodgers would want to play in Vegas, and I know recently we've heard Davante clamoring for it on social media, but do you think Aaron wants to go play in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and a Sean Payton coach Denver Broncos? I don't think so, but I did want to put the Raiders in the video because it is worth mentioning. The other trade destination for Aaron that is talked about a lot, and rightfully so by the way, is the New York Jets. The New York Jets are a good football team and are missing one position. They have playmakers everywhere, from Quinnen Williams on the interior defensive line, to Sauce Gardner, the defensive rookie of the year, to Garrett Wilson, the offensive rookie of the year, and last but certainly not least, Breece Hall, a player who could have easily been the offensive rookie of the year if he stayed healthy. Rodgers to the Jets would immediately have them in contention for not only the playoffs, but for winning a playoff game or two if they were able to acquire him. The Jets finished 2022 with a 7-10 record, which was very unfortunate after a 7-4 start. They put up a combined 15 points in the final 3 games of the season, and not surprisingly, if you can only average 5 points per game, you're going to lose the majority of those said games. They also had 5 games they lost in which the defense held the opponents to 20 points or less, and lost. And if you have Aaron Rodgers with all of the weapons the Jets have on their team, it's hard to imagine them not winning at least 3 of those 5. Rodgers going to New York immediately improves this team, and given how much promise the Jets already have, they certainly would not be the same old Jets, and they would be very, very dangerous. And that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help a ton. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.